What traumas do you have that aren't from your parents or childhood home? Ignoring a text from a close friend to kick it and him getting shot and killed the next day. I'm so sorry, I have a similar one. He died a week later from falling down a set of stairs and hitting his head. It sucks so bad. It's okay. I battled with the what-ifs for a while until one day I imagined him telling me to get over it, LOL. Never will get over it, but we gotta keep it pushing. I'm sorry for your loss too. Maybe we'll get a chance to kick it with them again someday somewhere. Being roofied at a bar after one drink and needing to call family to come get me as I basically melted to the floor in the bathroom. To this day, my family still thinks I was just very drunk. I had one drink. It pisses me off so badly and feeds into my anxiety of nobody believing me about pretty much anything. I was roofied once too. I was out with a new friend and I had a glass of water. I don't drink alcohol. And I had a few sips, and then the whole night is this weird memory. And I remember being so hot and confused and didn't know why I was walking these unfamiliar streets. I came to in the morning and I was at a bus stop because this amazing homeless guy realized I was out of my mind and shadowed me, which could have also been so bad, and interfered if anyone tried to mess with me, made sure I didn't wander into traffic. I remain as unfamiliar with downtown LA as I was that night. I grew up in the valley and never spent time downtown. I didn't know where the car was and I had to call my mom to pick me up. We tracked down the homeless man and he refused money and refused a meal and said I was just making sure she was okay. I lost my phone and a few things I'd purchased that can never be replaced. I ended up okay physically. It messed me up mentally. I never thought it would happen to me. I remain grateful to that guy every day. I feel like I was saved because of the kindness of this man. He would not accept anything in return. I told him I'd always be indebted to him. He said I was not. But you know, I am. Guardian angel. I believe you. I'm sorry that happened to you. That's happened to me once before as well. Unfortunately, I didn't realize it until years later when I had a sudden flashback and all the pieces fell into place. The pain I felt down there the next day should have been a red flag for me, but I had just had back surgery a week or so before this, and they went through my lower abdomen to do the surgery. So I assumed it was because of that and not because my friends would do that to me. Makes me sick to think about because I wonder if it was just one guy who did it or if they were all in on it and there were multiple. I'll never know unless somehow they talk, but that's very unlikely. Thank you, and I am so sorry that happened to you. I hope they got what they deserved for hurting you. It breaks my heart for you that it was so many years later that it all finally made sense. Sending you love. My sister was murdered when I was 18. For years, if someone was late, even slightly, I assumed they were dead. I'm so fucking sorry first, but yes, too much death. And close death. If I don't answer my phone, my mom goes in full panic. She's 73 and I'm 40. Has seen so many people die, and then the close ones. Family, kids, sister, brothers. We have had 3 unexpected deaths in our family in the last 10 years. Now I hate when my mom leaves the house without me. Hey man, did you already subscribe on me? You don't? Subscribe and press like faster. I feel this at such a deep level. My cousin and her babies were murdered, and I went through the exact same thing with assuming people were dead if they were late or if I couldn't get a hold of them. I also woke up at 3 a.m., which is when I was woken up and told we needed to go into hiding because the murderer was still on the loose and threatened the rest of the family too. Every night for years before I finally went to a therapist. I hope you are in a better place now. I'm sorry this happened. My friend was murdered a year ago. I have the same feeling when I can't reach people. I sent her a message that morning, but she was already dead. The message was opened and read, but I found out later that the police opened it. They had her phone. I'm still struggling with PTSD, but have done lots of therapy. But I still think about her 1,000 times a day. Such an awful, isolating experience a lot of people don't understand or know how to empathize with. My dad killed himself. Anytime someone calls me twice in a row, I'm sure someone else is dead. Same exact situation with my dad. And also, if my phone rings late at night, they are deaf dead. I kept my phone on silent BC of it, actually. My brother killed himself almost a year ago. He still lived with my parents at the time, and they came home to find the note. He left the house to do it. Small blessings, I guess. I called my mom that day to check on my dad following a doctor's appointment, and she didn't answer. Rang twice, still no answer. Waited 30 minutes and rang again. No answer. My mom always answers my calls. She takes my phone calls when she's in the shower. She takes my calls at 2 a.m. I thought it would be my dad. I thought something had gone wrong at the doctor's appointment, but she called me back an hour later to tell me my brother was missing, and he'd left a note, and the police were there, and my brother probably wasn't coming home. Whenever a close friend or loved one doesn't answer a call, I get that same feeling. I'm sorry you know what that's like. If you ever want to talk, you can DM me. Coming home and finding my wife on the floor with EMTs working on her and them looking at me and shaking their heads. Even worse, my 7-year-old granddaughter was there through all of it and was strong enough to dial 911 and let the EMTs in. It's been 13 years since that, and therapy got me and her through it. She's grown into a delightful, happy young woman. Me? I'm still alone, maybe always will be, and that's okay. I got lots of grandkids and siblings and our 96-year-old dad to keep me busy. That's awful. What happened to her, if I may ask? Cardiac arrest or blood clot from her leg to her lung is what the doctor felt it was. I had a similar experience, right down to the pulmonary embolism from the leg clot, except I was the one calling the paramedics. I'm so sorry you lost your life partner the same way. Once when I was a kid, I picked up a toy flute off the ground at my friend's house and inhaled with it in my mouth before I started blowing into it. Next thing I knew, I had a mouthful of ants. I kept spitting, but there were so many and they had the most acrid, awful taste. I cried and rinsed my mouth out, but it took so long until I stopped tasting ants. You ever have those times where you feel a little tickle on your leg, and you kind of freak for a moment because it feels like a bug of some kind is crawling on you? But it's just a thread or something? Well, one time I decided to ignore it because it had always been nothing. But the tickle didn't stop and it was moving upwards. I looked down and saw a massive wolf spider crawling up my leg. I am terrified of spiders. I freaked and instinctually smacked it off my leg. Hitting it with my hand dislodged the countless baby spiders that were on its back, that then proceeded to scatter all over my leg. I cannot describe the feeling that washed over me in that moment. Suffice to say, I definitely cried and spent the next several days feeling a phantom, crawling sensation all over my body. My fear of spiders turned into a full-blown phobia that day. Oh my god, I have no words. My heart actually started racing a bit just remembering that story. My husband was running and got hit by a car in November, and I saw him basically bleeding out in the road and then followed the ambulance to the hospital and they brought him in as a John Doe. And so when I asked repeatedly where he was for 90 minutes, they told me he wasn't there, despite following the ambulance from the street to the hospital, so I was 100% convinced he died en route. Losing my middle son the day before me and my husband's wedding anniversary. He was hit and killed by a vehicle. Police came to my home and had me identify his body. Worst feeling in the world. After that, I could barely sleep or eat. I got so sleep-deprived that I started to hear and see things, and I literally felt like I was going crazy. Had to go to the doctors to get meds to help me sleep and help with my anxiety, depression. The pain is still there some days less, and others I feel like I'm drowning, but I am a survivor and I keep on going. My biggest fear is losing one of my children. God forbid. The strongest people in the world are the ones who suffer through that and survive. I am a cancer survivor. I had over 40 surgeries, chemo, and radiation. I have medical CPTSD. I just started living again. I'm happy for the first time in 15 years. It's wild. People don't talk enough about PTSD brought on by medical issues and the treatment, or lack thereof, for those issues. When I first met my pain specialist, the nicest man on this planet, he saw I was shaking and ready to burst into tears. He calmly explained medical PTSD and took the time to ensure I was comfortable with what he was saying and doing. His compassion was overwhelming. I've been treated so poorly in the past, and he helped me regain my faith in the medical profession. I have unfortunately had many bad experiences since, but I always remind myself that there are good ones. Doctors who actually care. Not cancer, but the medical trauma is real. I've always been a very sick person, starting as far back as I can remember. The nurse in the school infirmary knew my mom's number by heart because I got very sick very often, and usually whatever ailment I had would come on all of a sudden in the middle of the day. The nurse knew I would never go in for petty reasons. I carried my own painkillers and antacids since I was 8, so if I was at the infirmary, it was time to go to the hospital or at least go home. But you mentioning surgery reminded me of this experience. When I was 11, I had an extremely nasty eye infection. It kept getting worse even with meds until one night I wiped a tear and it was blood. My parents rushed me to the ER of the eye hospital. Yeah, we have a specialized eye hospital in this city. The doctor took a look and said I needed emergency surgery. They started prepping, and the anesthesiologist came in and said they didn't have anything appropriate for a child. They asked around at nearby pharmacies and called a couple of other hospitals to see if they would be able to get some. They said they can get it, but if we waited for anesthesia, I would probably lose that eye. My parents chose not to wait. They were too scared to be in the room with me even though the surgeon asked if they wanted to get prepped and go into the OR to support me. Can you imagine how scared I was? There were 5 nurses physically restraining me, 1 at each limb and 1 at my head. The surgeon had some sort of device that held my eyelid open. The pincers coming straight at my eye was so scary. I was screaming. I was terrified. The surgery was over in less than half an hour, but I didn't stop shaking for 3 days. I have a lot of other traumatic medical experiences, including 6 near-death experiences, and several psychiatric emergencies, which can be scarier than an NDE, at least for me. But that surgery is the only incident in my life that left me physically shaking from terror for 3 days straight. Maybe late to the party here, but when I was 25, I was staying at my parents' home looking after their cat while they were away on vacation. At 4:50 a.m., I was woken up by the sound of someone pounding on the glass of the screen door at the front entrance. Then they hit it so hard it shattered. I ran to the front of the house and peeked out the window. There was a woman there in a pink nightdress, and now that the glass was shattered, she was still pounding away on the inner wooden door. I went to the door and yelled, "What's going on?" She identified herself as one of the neighbors and begged me to let them in because her son was killing them, referring to her and her husband. I let her in, and she basically collapsed in my arms, and I let her down to the floor. Her arms were covered in defensive cut wounds, and she had been stabbed in at least a couple spots. I got the front door closed and locked as her son was about to run up the front steps. He then left, thank God. Called 911, did the best I could to stem the bleeding, and waited for the police and EMS to arrive. Long story short, she survived, her husband did not, and her son barricaded himself in their house and committed suicide before the SWAT team moved in. I woke up fully awake at exactly 4:50 a.m. for years after. And stupid me for telling this story again, because now I probably will again for a few weeks. Thanks for watching this video. Subscribe, press like, and comment. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.